Welcome to Strawberry Ink. Today we're diving into a tragic and controversial case from Texas that has sparked debates about justice, forensic science, and the death penalty. This is a story of Cameron Todd Willingham. There is a movie that was released in 2019, which is now available on Netflix. It's called Trial by Fire. I really recommend it. It's worth watching, and that movie is based on the story that I will be discussing in this episode. Cameron was born and raised in Ardmore, Oklahoma. After his mother left him when he was just about 13 months old, he was raised by his dad, Gene Willingham, who owned an auto salvage yard, and his stepmother, Eugene. Willingham attended the Ardmore High School but dropped out in 10th grade. Throughout those years, he struggled with substance abuse, including huffing paint and glue. If he did not have the typical drugs, he would look for what he could consume. He had minor brushes with law enforcement for burglaries, theft, DUI, and weapons offenses. He did not get the counseling or the treatment he needed. Maybe options were available, but what he really needed was attention, a family that loved him, something he did not have. In October 1991, Willingham married Stacy Kendall, with whom he had been living for in a span of several years. She was the love of his life, and they were living in a home together. They had 3 daughters together, Amber Lewis, as well as 2 twins, Carmen and Cameron. Amber Lewis was 2 years old, Carmen Diane and Cameron Mary were 1. The family lived in Corsicana, Texas. Willingham worked as a mechanic but lost his job in November 1991. Around this time, Stacy worked at her brother's bar in the Angusat area. On December 23rd, 1991, a fire destroyed the family home at West 1213 11th Street. Tragically, all 3 of Willingham's kids perished in the blades, being burnt to death. Willingham himself escaped with minor burns. His wife Stacy was not home and had been out shopping for Christmas gifts. Investigators looking into this fire alleged that Willingham set the fire deliberately to cover up abuse, although there was no evidence that he had abused his kids, and Stacy insisted he would never harm their kids. Initial fire investigation suggested the use of a liquid accelerant, which claims multiple points of origin, puddle-shaped burn patterns, and melted aluminum. Neighbors and investigators also noted Willingham's behavior, describing him as distraught but also pointing to moments where he seemed calm. While prosecutors later suggested guilt, there was still a group of people believing that he was innocent. On January 8th, 1992, the police questioned Willingham further at the Navarro County Sheriff's headquarters, and that was when he was informed that he was being tied as a suspect to the fire to a criminal probe in the state of Texas. He was put into handcuffs and read his Miranda rights before being booked into the Navarro County Jail. The arrest affidavit accused him of intentionally starting the fire to kill his children, motivated by domestic difficulties and a desire to rid himself of family responsibilities. Willingham denied setting the fire, maintaining that he tried to rescue his daughters. The following day, on January 9th, 1992, Magistrate James Lagomorcino ordered that he remain in custody without bond to await trial. He was charged with 3 counts of capital murder and the prosecution, led by John Jackson, sought the death penalty. Willingham was represented by public defenders David Martin and Robert Dunn. He pleaded not guilty before Judge Charles Baird, who ordered a grand jury review. By February 1992, a grand jury confirmed the charges. Willingham's trial began on August 8, 1992. The trial consisted of 12 jury members with 2 alternates. In addition to arson evidence, a cellmate, Johnny Webb, who was subpoenaed to the trial as a jailhouse informant, testified that Willingham had confessed to the crime. Webb had made a deal with the prosecution to testify in this trial in exchange for him to get less jail time. Experts presented controversial claims, including that Willingham's tattoos and posters indicated sociopathy. Dr. James Grigson, known as Dr. Death, testified that Willingham had an incurable sociopath condition. Eyewitnesses described his behavior at the fire as both hysterical and calm. Prosecutors argued this inconsistency was suspicious. On August 20th, 1992, the jury found Cameron Willingham guilty on all charges. Then it was time for the penalty phase. This same jury went on to sentence him on August 24th, 1992, to death row. Together, they voted to put him to death. Judge Charles Chapman oversaw the sentencing and subsequent appeals, refusing to overturn nor redo any phase of the trial. Willingham was moved to the Ellis Unit in Huntsville, Texas, as he pursued appeals. At this point, that judge had already confirmed the death sentence. Cameron Willingham maintained his innocence until his execution on February 17, 2004. All appeal forms failed. He died at the Huntsville unit from lethal injection. Then, advances in fire science later discredited the original evidence, showing that there was no proof of arson. Investigators, including Gerald Hurst, the main one running the case, demonstrated that the burn patterns were consistent with accidental fire and flashover. The case gained renewed attention through articles in The New Yorker in 2009 and documentaries like Incendiary. The Willingham case highlighting errors in forensic science and the unreliability of jailhouse informant testimony. Webb, the informant, recanted his claims, affirming that Willingham had not confessed. Webb admitted that he was offered this deal to testify and lie on the stand in order for him to have a less severe penalty and for Cameron Willingham to get death. He really had nothing against Willingham, and a part of him regrets ever taking this decision to testify in a trial, lie in order to have someone be put to death. Willingham's father, Gene, spent years advocating for his son's exoneration. He challenged the original arson evidence and spoke with journalists, as well as innocence advocates. Despite his efforts, including appeals for clemency to Governor Rick Perry, Cameron's execution was carried out. Gene Willingham passed away on July 16, 2025, at the age of 84 of natural causes, having lived to see the documentaries and films like Trial by Fire, which tell his son's story. He thanked the directors for doing so. Cameron Todd Willingham's case remains one of the most debated wrongful conviction stories in the United States. It raises urgent questions about forensic science, capital punishment, and justice. While the legal system executed him, modern investigations strongly suggests he was innocent. I too believe he was innocent and believe that he was executed in prison for no reason. Once his innocence had already been publicly proven, it was too late. He was already dead, and there is no turning back. There is no way to revive him after that injection already went through his veins and he had already been euthanized. When this investigation concluded, at least a federal judge should have delayed the execution until the rest of the investigation was complete. This was a really difficult case to discuss. And I would like to say before I part, may all the deceased ones mentioned in this episode rest in peace. Take care and have a good rest of your day. I hope you guys never have to go through what Cameron Willingham went through. And I recommend you watch that movie on Netflix, Trial by Fire. Look it up.